everyone. Welcome to the Enterprise Mobility Insights Outlook podcast. I'm Gina Daniel Lee, Vice President of Strategic Alliances and Partnerships here at Stratix. Isn't mobility great? It's always changing and never stagnant. It's so exciting to see new developments, solutions, and ideas. Today's topic is about evolving technology and how it is influencing IT strategies everywhere. My guest and longtime friend, Rob Puric, is here to chat with us about this. Rob is Vice President, Product Management for Mobile Computing at Zebra. Rob, I'm so happy to have you today. Thank you for joining us and welcome to the podcast.
Great, Gina. Thanks for the invite. It's great to be here with you and your fellow podcast members, and look forward to a great dialogue.
I know we're going to have a great one. So as we start off the podcast, why don't we just have you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I'm Rob Puric. Like you said, I'm the Vice President of Product Management. I started at Symbol Technologies back in 1997 and worked my way up through the vice president level. I did have a stint at Honeywell where I managed a connected home business before coming back in 2017 to run our field mobility and then ultimately our entire segments and business operations for mobile computing. So I'm really excited to be here today. And Stratix is a very strategic partner for Zebra, and we work a lot on a lot of different deals. And I just wanted to convey to the audience that number one, we kind of look at this relationship in two ways. One is getting insights from Stratix and their team to help us develop better mobile computing products, but also to share with them on what we're hearing back from customers as well. So I think this is going to be a good dialogue on this topic area of IT and where we see things going in the future. So go ahead and fire away there, Gina.
I completely agree, though. We really have had a long, great strategic partnership, and you're one of the reasons for that. So thank you. So I don't know if you had a chance to read our recently published 2023 Enterprise Mobility Outlook report, but in it, there's a really interesting statistic. And that is that 78% of respondents told us that emerging technology is influencing their IT strategies. Does that percentage surprise you at all?
No, not at all, especially in the world that we live in today, this on-demand economy. And I think what's shifted a lot was this nice to have features to must have features. And I think when I talk about features, we're talking about 5G, the Wi-Fi 6, that's just the beginning catalyst of that. That's almost like a natural to have those technologies. But what I'm talking about is some of those other emerging technologies that we're seeing, like mobile dimensioning, wound management. Depending upon what vertical segment you're going after, there's specific needs that we're seeing. And I think the pandemic that we just came out of helped us or educated us in that remote workforce and that whole BOPIS, buy online, pick up in store, that we then started to realize, wow, there's a real increase for this on-demand economy and what we're seeing. And what we saw there was definitely an increase from online ordering driven by the pandemic to that retail storefront becoming the de facto warehouse. And retailers who are familiar with using these wearable solutions in a distribution center now using them in the front of the store as well. So we definitely see some synergies in driving different use cases. Like, well, this is a different use case that emerged through the pandemic. So we're seeing a lot of this happen real time, and then also kind of a full understanding of how mobility drives more productivity. And it's all about productivity, what everybody's seeking and going after. So whether it's a tablet, a handheld, a wearable, this is where Zebra looks to partners like Stratix to really help us tell and understand what the customer demand in those new use cases are. That's a great question.
Yeah, I completely agree with your assessment there. In our enterprise mobility report, there's another interesting statistic that says that 59% of enterprises are now using more wearables. That's more than in the combined 3 years, and 67% more IoT. Are you seeing that at Zebra, Rob? And how are mobile use cases changing?
Yeah, so that's another great question, and so especially around the wearable area, and definitely more around IoT, like the Internet of Things, and the whole convergence that we saw, like with your own personal use, like the smartwatch, that's becoming a wearable device that people use every day now.
Right.
In our IoT space, we're seeing a lot of that being deployed in supply chain management, remote patient monitoring, retail store management, and getting that customer data real time. So I guess a good data point to give to you is what we saw over the last, say, from 2018 to 2022. Our Bluetooth ring scanner sale almost tripled between that time frame.
Wow.
And most of this growth was really driven by deployments where customers are pairing a host device like a TC5 or TC2 to a Bluetooth ring scanner. So we saw a lot of that happen. But now we're seeing that whole advent of the smartwatch taking on a new form in wearable technology in the IoT space. And that's one of the reasons why we just launched the new WS50, which is a kind of a smartwatch type, a little bit bigger because we have to have, obviously, more ruggedization, more capabilities like voice picking and all of that. So that's a key area in wearables. The other one is robotics. And robotics is playing a bigger role, and I'm sure you're seeing it as well, playing a bigger role in the warehouse management piece. And now combining the WS50 to then signal to the robot where to go on my next pick. And I want you to be at this location is something that we're seeing. And again, driven a lot by what we're seeing around increasing productivity, improve workforce ergonomics. So having it on the wrist as opposed to, having it on my hand, frees up that hand to do more of that picking operation. And then device loss is another big area that we're really doubling down on and providing newer software technology to help find lost devices, whether it's a Bluetooth ring scanner or one of our TCs or MC devices. We're doing a lot of work in that area.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of growth in wearables as well, exactly for the reasons you called out, productivity. And I think it's interesting that, we've talked about wearables in the context of the warehouse and the enterprise, but now we're also seeing, wearables on our own personal bodies, right, with watches and things like that. Are you seeing, though, Rob, in business that most wearables are being implemented as a standalone solution, or are they being paired with another device like a tablet?
That's another great question. I think we're seeing a combination of both. Standalone being the more traditional, TC device, using it in the retail store in the warehouse. But then when it comes time to, again, go back to that productivity, especially during peak season where they have to get goods in and out, the modality then switches from a hands-on device or standalone device to now a hands-free device. So they coupled it on their wrist, combining with the Bluetooth ring scanner to now have hands-free operation to do their picking. The same thing with the tablet. It's kind of like a mini computer that does everything a laptop can do, but now it's more portable and easier to use from anywhere that you're working. But coupled with that Bluetooth ring scanner gives that mobile user now the hands-free capabilities that they maybe didn't have before. And I think that's where we're seeing some of the shifting occurring, going from that more of a TCMC type form factor to now more of that wearable solution that you could then couple depending upon the user environment, the use case that you're going after, and of course it's the seasonality. Because during peak season, whether you're a T&L worker or a retail worker, you're always constantly putting stuff on the shelf to replenish them. So I think that's another key area that we're seeing being in that area. So connectivity being that key operative word that you mentioned in your opening question as well.
So after lots of anticipation, 5G is finally here. I almost feel like we should have a drum roll here, right? But yeah, I think there's a little bit of confusion because 5G is not just about faster download speeds. It also reduces the time it takes to send a packet of information and get a response, which is really important for things like virtual reality and self-driving cars and robotics. But as we know, 5G also gives you the ability to connect many more devices, which is becoming more and more critical as we bring more and more IoT devices online, right? And then there's private 5G, which is becoming more and more important to the enterprise. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, I think there's two reasons for that. I think first and foremost, similar to what happened, several years ago, the whole 3G to 4G. Listen, 4G is going to be around for quite a while, but 5G, I think, gives And then I'll talk about the public 5G first before getting into private 5G. The public 5G, obviously the operators, the carriers are doubling down on that because they need to make more room for the infrastructure there. That's why they took 3G down to begin with. But I think this gets more exciting for us in the IoT area because, as you said, it opens up new doors and new opportunities to sell more equipment in these other use cases that you mentioned. AI. We're spending a lot of time around the AI area. AR Core is something that we have in almost all of our products today, and certified AR Core that is. So that whole augmented reality is something that we're seeing more and more play out with the advent of the cameras that we're putting into these newer devices. Gives the customer the ability now to look at things like stockouts in a retail store, to then give real-time information and feedback to say, hey, look, I've got a stockout problem on this store shelf. I need to replace that store shelf in that time frame. It also gives us a higher reliability and more customizable, more flexible capabilities in that area. So that's the public side. The private side is very fascinating. I mean, one of the things we did, we were the first ones to put Band 48 CBRS in some of our units, in a tablet, as well as in the handheld device. Why is that important? Well, because we were going to go after that private 5G market. Think about the use case there for a minute, Gina. Right. You've got a TNL operator that has a huge yard that has all these trailers that they have to bring into these cross docks every day, every minute of the day they have to do that. What happened in that area was they had to secure and add all the different Wi-Fi access points. And so I'll give you a statistic. One CBRS baseband replaces 12 access points. Think about that for a moment from a TCO standpoint.
Yeah.
That's a huge investment that now from an IT perspective gets the ability now to put in those private 5G or CBRS baseband stations in those areas. Now, let's talk about the warehouse a little bit. So that's outside the four walls. Let's talk about inside the four walls for a minute. For private 5G, manufacturing and warehouse are the two biggest areas that we're seeing the movement into private 5G. Now, why is that important? Again, go back to the total cost of ownership. I have to put a Wi-Fi network. I got to put in all these access points. I got to run wires to the access points. I then have to load in security on those access points and all of that. That becomes a more burdensome effort as opposed to putting a private 5G network that then they control. Even though it's 5G, they're thinking, oh my God, I got to talk about the carrier. No, the private 5G network, they control the destiny of their IT infrastructure, and they control their own environment. And they're able to run, like you were just saying before, robotics, automation. That's when you need the bandwidth, the 5G bandwidth, to run those type of use cases and run those type of operations in those environments. So we saw some pretty sizable deals coming in from BMW, Tesla, VW, all going into private 5G. And we see more and more of that happen, I think, in the next year to 2 years, for sure.
I think we are too. There seems to be kind of this competition, if you will, in the enterprise between different teams in the organization pushing for more and more mobile technology. But, I wonder, what's the impact of all this new technology on other teams in the organization, like IT and others?
Yeah, so I think that's one of the things that I think we're seeing there also is, far more devices to manage, right? So how do I now manage all these devices in that area? How do I support them? How do I provide them the updates that they need? How do I provide the security protocols that we have there? So I think we have to watch out for a little bit of that burnout there. But you talk about that mobility report. I think it was interesting to see that statistic that you threw out about 41% putting everything in it very or extremely important in that essence. So I think that's an area that I think we both collectively, Zebra, Stratix, need to take a look at how these IT organizations are going to be managing, deploying these devices and helping them make it easier for them to switch to some of these newer devices that offer the 5G and the Wi-Fi 6E, because that's another thing that we're seeing in that movement as well, and helping them to not only understand the benefits of that technology, but also to help them not only understand it, but also move to that area and give them reasons for that. And that's the reason why you probably answered that question before as well.
That's right. That's right. And I know I keep bringing up the 2023 Enterprise Mobility Report, but man, there's such good information in there and some really great statistics. So I'm going to quote another one. And that is that 75% of respondents told us they're at least somewhat overwhelmed by the increasing number of mobile devices, with 41% putting it at very or extremely overwhelmed. I mean, that's a lot of overwhelmed people.
Yeah. Yeah. But
No, go ahead.
no, I think a lot of that is very factual. I mean, we see every day, like when they're trying to deploy like 1,000 of these devices, and the time it takes to do the pilot program, that they have to get everything up and running before they start the full deployment. I mean, it takes a lot of time, and it takes a village to do it correctly, I would say, right? And the people that mastered that are the ones who really go out and do the necessary pre-work on getting these units prepped, getting them staged, getting them provisioned, and then doing the pre-pilots on that before the full deployment, so they don't run into those pain points later on down the road.
Agreed. And talk to me a little bit about organizational best practices. I mean, how can some of these best practices help to lessen this feeling of being overwhelmed?
Yeah, I think there's really three things that I see. I think the first one is around this holistic endpoint management platform. It helps to simplify things, better security at the endpoint, just because it's so fragmented. I think that's one area. I think asset management, and we talked a little bit about that before. Some of the work that we're doing around what are some of the like lost devices, and using our device tracker software. Biometrics is coming up a lot. Like, how do I use facial recognition potentially, instead of offering it and constantly putting in that 6-digit or 8-digit PIN code every time the unit falls asleep? So we're looking at those decisions. But also, I think there's also the last one, which is around centralizing that decision-making process. Procuring those mobile solutions and enables us to see multiple potential workflows from the same technology. And what that equals is a higher ROI, a higher cost savings, and easier to manage these devices. I think those are kind of the three things that I would leave your audience with in terms of what we're seeing around best practices.
And how is emerging technology influencing IT strategies today?
Yeah, that's another great question. As we move into this new age of 5G and Wi-Fi 6E and those, I think technology is more critical than ever in the business success factor. And I think especially when companies are thinking about deploying private 5G, they need to look at that analysis a little bit more closely. So overall business planning is one area. Goal setting is another, like with your IT stakeholders, and making sure that you have all the checklists done properly in that area. I think another area would be, that IT has an eye on what's new and what are the potential new use cases that this technology can give them. I think that's where you and I can come in and better educate those customers in that. So, looking at those potential disruptors is another area, like what could be, happening downstream. What's your vision for some of those areas? I think that's another, spot on that area in terms of where IT is looking at how to leverage these assets more effectively, and how to combine them in choosing the right devices, whether it's a TC, a tablet, or a wearable computer. And then the other that you very well know this model is, is it a full CapEx model? Is it a DaaS model, or is it even a rental model? I mean, those are the other business decisions that we see that we're making in that area. And finally, the roadmap, right? Yes, so Zebra can and offer these various business models all the way up to a full-blown CapEx model. But, we got to work together and figure out what is best for our end customers. What is that business model that they're looking for that makes it easier and more intuitive for them to proceed forward with?
I agree. I think it's really all about businesses being ready to grow and evolve as technology grows, isn't it? And I also think it's about proactive planning and sometimes thinking outside the box on how to go to market. I mean, like you mentioned with some of Zebra's unique financing offerings and working with partners to get creative on how to go to market while working collaboratively with other partners like carriers to bring to market new solutions, right?
Absolutely.
And then you got to think about the resources, right?
And that's one thing that we do have plenty of is those resources. I mean, whether it's resources in marketing, sales, product management teams, which is where I come from. It's very important to it's very important to listen to our customers, including our partners. And I think that's a key asset that I think we all need to do a better job of in terms of listening to what our customers are telling us, whether it's good or bad. But especially in this day and age of how fast things are moving in the IoT space, I think it's even more important now. And I think that this is an area that I think I strive every day to at least have a conversation with a customer, with a partner, to really understand the dynamics of what's going on in the business. I travel a lot all over the world. I speak to CIOs all the time about listening to their pain points and trying to figure out ways to solve them. And I think that's a key area that we both strive and work really hard in accomplishing there.
Completely agree. Any final thoughts as we wrap up, Rob?
I think the final thought that I'd give everybody is what I just kind of articulated before, but just really I think the first thing is really trying to understand the customer pain points, what's new, what's emerging use cases that they're looking for, what problems they're trying to solve. Second, we need to do the proper training and education and start looking at this. We started doing that in earlier this year. If you were at NRF, the whole Monostore initiative that we rolled out.
It's great.
NRF, that is a key thing that I think Stratix is looking to look into that as well. And third, I think it's making sure that our partners like Stratix understand that where the market's moving, so that we move together in these areas, that we become a better team and looking at what we need to do in developing these new products, coming up with the right feature sets, and making sure that we address the right use cases. So I think that's an area that we both can share and agree on.
Completely agree. And those are great thoughts to end on. So if you've listened to any of our podcasts, Rob, you know that we like to end with a little fun and some random rapid fire questions if you're game.
You bet.
All right. So number one, how do you unwind after work?
So I unwind after work. I either exercise, or I try to play 9 holes of golf at least once a week, and I also read a good book, and that kind of helps me unwind the day-in-day activities.
Any particular genre of book?
Well, right now I'm reading it's called The Fearless Organization by Amy Edmondson. So it's a good book on organizational development, which is I'm always striving to do, to have the best of breed team I could possibly have. So
very good. Very good. All right, let's switch gears and talk pizza. Thin crust or thick crust?
Well, for me, it has to be thin crust because I have a gluten allergy, so I have to go with the thin crust on that one. That's an easy one.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear that you and I can have pizza together, because that's where I lean towards too, and maybe even a little cauliflower crust.
There you go.
Would you rather see the Loch Ness Monster or Bigfoot?
Oh, that's an interesting one. So I think I choose a Loch Ness Monster, and I think the reason why I live by the water and I enjoy the water, and I try to enjoy the water with fishing as well as best I can. So I got to go with the Loch Ness Monster.
Love that. Love that. Rob, it's been so great having you on the podcast today. Thank you for joining me and sharing your insights.
Well, thank you, Gina. Thank you to the Stratix team there. And thank you to your listeners. And thank you for all your help on that one too. Thank you.
Of course. And listeners, if you liked what you've heard and would like more information or would like to sign up for future episodes, please visit us at stratixcorp.com/podcast to subscribe. We'd also love it if you would rate and leave a review for any podcast that you've listened to, or to simply suggest any future topics you would like us to explore. I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Goodbye.